Hi everyone, Lori again from Lori J Journals. Thanks for tuning in. I'm not going to do a whole lot of introduction to this video. It is part three, an unplanned part three of the video series I'm doing for week 3 of Savage Stitches. So we've been working on this Frankenstein stitching project. We did fabric in part 1 with slow hand stitching. We did sewing machine messiness for part 2, and I promised I would show you what the end result looks like and then how I use it. So what you're seeing here is the completed kind of semi-square of my Frankenstein paper. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away some of the strings. I told you that I don't really mess with it until the end because some of them get tucked, some of them you might want to leave there. I'm not going to worry about the ones that are along the edge. I'm mostly concerned with the ones that are creating the spider web mess in the middle of my paper. So I'm going to start by trimming them down. I'm not trimming them really close because what I don't want is a whisker look. So I'm just going to trim them down, and I know that I can trim them some more later. I'm just trying to eliminate, as I said, that kind of messy spider web look in the middle of my paper. Okay, so I'm trimming them down. You can certainly cut them off. Sometimes what I do is when I get to the next stage where I'm actually using the sheet as a project, I'll trim again and glue down if I need to. But I don't know what that's going to look like yet until I create something, so I'm not going to worry about it too much at this point. Again, what I don't want is just the spiderweb look in the middle. It makes it hard to imagine what you want to do with the project, okay? It's also, I just want to mention that it's okay if you have, so you can see some of my edges are coming up. We're not gluing, we stitched, right? And so some of these edges aren't quite batted down. And that's also something that I will do later. What I did want to show you is I mentioned that what I do is I back this to a deli sheet when I'm finished. I do that for 2 reasons. The first is the practical reason, which is it is much easier to manipulate that sheet. So if you look at the back, right, it's all scrapped together. There's threads there. If I back it to the deli sheet, all of that gets tucked away. It gets glued down. The back threads get tucked under. And it's much easier to manipulate the sheet to do things. The second reason is, who doesn't love the feel and the sound of deli paper, right? So once I create on it, as I fold, it gets that crinkly sound and feel, which I love. One alternative is if you wanted to do something big with the project, like if you want to turn it into a journal cover, then you may choose not to back it here. I am going to do it. As promised, I wanted to show you what I do with it. So I'm pulling all of the threads in that poke through the back. I'm not worrying about the front end threads, only the ones that come through the back. Pulling them all in just so that they get tucked. It's okay if they don't all make it in there. I'm just trying to create less mess on the front. And it's easier to pull some of them in too once you have glue down. There are a couple of options for glue. I'm going to double glue. And the reason I'm going to do that is for extra... Okay, let me back up. The easiest way to get glue on all of it is to glue stick or medium. You can use matte medium, hodgepodge, whatever, on the deli sheet because it's smooth and that's the way you make sure you get everything. But we also know there are nooks and crannies, and sometimes glue sticks don't cover that up. So I'm going to use a little bit of art glitter glue because I have it handy. I might also use tacky glue. You could choose to use Fabri-Tac, whatever you have as your sticky glue. And I'm just going to give the Frankenstein paper a once over, kind of where some of the crevices are. It's just going to help reinforce And it doesn't matter what order you really do this in. I think that the wet glue stays active a little bit longer, whereas on the, and you can see I'm tucking under there, make sure that gets matted down. Whereas the glue stick, once I put it on the deli paper, I kind of want to affix it really quickly because that dries up with air really quickly. All right, so I've got some glitter glue, and again, I might have to reinforce. I'm always aware of that. Leave that to the side. I'm going to set this aside with the glue on it, and I'm going to get... Now, I always struggle with the deli paper of which side should take the glue. I think one is shinier than the other, but sometimes it's hard to tell. And I'm going to use a big glue stick. I like Yoo-Hoo. That Scotch Craft, I think, is what Create one is good too, but some people have been mentioning lately that it's been hard to find. Matte medium with a brush is also a really good way. I'm trying to be quick and to not have to get the dish and the brush and everything out. I just kind of wanted to do this quickly. I feel like I've been able to cover it pretty well. And again, I might have to go back, and that's okay. I find it easier to put the Frankenstein paper down and to set the deli paper on top. And you notice we talked about this. It's not exact. You know, this deli sheet is square. And I wasn't exact with my Frankenstein paper. I know that there's trimming that has to happen. That's okay. And if you want to do it the other way, you can certainly do it the other way. But I find that this is the easiest way to do it. Remember, I still have lots of strings on the outside. That's okay. And remember that this deli paper doesn't really have a necessary function. It's really for ease of manipulation and play. So if it's coming up on the edges, it's not a big deal. You can add a little more glue, and we're going to trim it down eventually. So, you know, add some glue to the corners if you need to any of the edges. And the other thing I'll say really quick as I'm gluing the edges, you can see that my Frankenstein paper hangs off the edge here. I went wider than what would become the deli paper. That's not a big deal because I'm going to trim it all anyway. But if you have, sometimes when you create this, you have a certain piece or a corner or some aspect of the paper that you just love and you want to make sure it doesn't get trimmed away. Just make sure that when you glue it onto the deli sheet, that the part that you want to make sure you keep doesn't hang over the edge. You know, it's kind of a no-brainer. All right. You can see here I have a couple of spots. I just want to secure that down. This is fragile book page, and I just want to make sure that that doesn't come up. If you have any other spots like that, you can do that. Some of the fun of this is if the paper is sturdy, that it's not matted down. You know, that you have edges that stick up. That's the fun of sewing. All right. So normally I would let this go for a while, you know, but I want to show you what I do with it. And I would tell you also that normally, and I suggest you do the same if you can, you either want to use a really sharp scissors or you want to use a paper cutter. And I have a guillotine paper cutter, but it's in the other room. And that's what normally I would use so that I got a really straight edge and that I don't worry about tearing the paper. But I don't have that in this room. So for now, I can tell that I didn't get a perfectly straight edge, but I can fix it later. And then I'm going to take this one, do the same. And I have a choice. So you can see here, my deli paper goes up higher here. But for now, I'm going to leave it because I don't, as I'm deciding what to do with it, I'm not going to worry about it. I can trim that later. If I had my guillotine, I might make perfectly straight edges and cut it all off. Okay. So guillotine, I never know what the right way to pronounce that is. But anyway, tomato, right? Okay. So what I would do next is I would usually cut this either in half or 3 pieces. And that really depends on how big or small you want your pieces to be in order to make what you want to make out of them. So let me give you a few options. You can cut these and make belly bands. You can make journal pockets. You can make covers for scrappy pads. You can make this as an embellishment for the cover of a journal. My favorite thing to do with them, and I have made pockets, but my favorite thing to do with them is to make Happy Mail envelopes. Okay. But here's what I'm going to do. Again, if I had my guillotine, I would cut it right in half. It won't work well on a slide cut paper cutter. If you really want to try, flip it over and put the deli paper on the top and run it through. But I don't know. I don't recommend it. So I'm going to cut, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. This is a really thick paper with this kind of reinforcement thing on here. I don't want to cut through it. So I'm going to cut right here. And again, I hate hand cutting because I'm not good at cutting straight. If I had my guillotine, I would do that. And I'm going to cut this right in half. I'm going to set this piece aside. I will use it for something, not sure what yet. And for this, I'm going to even out. So I'm going to flip this back over because remember my deli paper wasn't as big as the rest. I'm going to even out this edge. And there I go. So I'm going to turn this into an envelope. So this is why it's helpful to have the deli paper. And again, if it's not matted down, super tight, you can see there's kind of bubbles in there. That's fine. It's really just there to contain all those threads and to help you manipulate it. And notice those threads that I cut away, I only have a few little stray ones left and I like them. I'm going to leave these. If you don't like them, cut them off and glue down where you cut, okay? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn it into an envelope. Okay, you could use a bone folder, but you want to be careful because you have a lot of scrappiness here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to trim this here because I don't like that there's deli paper sticking up. And actually what I could do, if I wanted, I could just tear it like that and I could make my envelope uneven. And you might like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what I'm going to do is trim it down. And then I'm going to sew my envelope. And looking at it now, I wish that I had not folded it up so high. I'm afraid that, well, maybe, let's see. I don't want to ruin it by putting too many, yeah, I like this better. Okay, so I might have an extra crease in my envelope, so be it. Yeah, that's better, okay. So I have this piece sticking up. I might choose to glue it down or cut it off. Hopefully this crease, the first crease I created, will fall out. But look how cool this looks, right? It's now a Happy Mail envelope. And I'm going to trim. I think it looks uneven here. And that's because I cut by hand. I told you I'm not great at cutting by hand. I think I'm going to guillotine it. And then I'm going to sew it. And you'll see it in the final product in the thumbnail. Okay? So there you go. Of course, you could take, as I mentioned, you can take this, the rest. You can make belly bands. You can make pockets. You can make corner tucks. You can do anything you want with them. And of course, you can always embellish on top of them. You all know how much I like scrappy clusters. You could put one as the closure. You could put one down here. You can do anything you want with them. So have fun. Can't wait to see your creations. #SavageStitches3.